there were still the witnesses in there. The implication of otherwise is a patently false statement and is nothing but disinformation and an outright lie. And you should be ashamed of the people you follow and respect for propagating that idea. For a lot of these ideas, you should be ashamed. And I am explicitly speaking to the Tim Pool subreddit. How many of these things did Tim Pool tweet without even reading? How many of these ideas did Tim Pool propagate? You guys hold him on a pedestal as a journalist of integrity who doesn't give a shit about party lines and will say the truth no matter what. But what good is that truth if it is not fact-checked and validated by reality? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is November 23rd, 2020. My name is Lycan. It's a nice, beautiful morning. Not too cold, but not warm, not foggy. Went out, got my coffee already. I have showered, I've done my hair, and I am ready to face the day. And what are we facing today? First, we're going to talk about the dumb Tucker Carlson drama for a minute, and then we're going to jump right on over to the dumbest image I have ever seen on the internet in the last week. And there's been a lot of them, but this really takes the cake. So we're going to do a little Lycan versus Tim Pool subreddit. Whoa. All right. Let's talk about Tucker Carlson real quick. So Tucker Carlson comes out the other day, and the lady that spoke with Rudy Giuliani basically comes out. I can't remember her name, unfortunately. It feels bad if you guys can inform me of it so I can say her name. So she comes out and she basically continues the claims of mass voter fraud, blah, blah, blah. We're going to go to court, whatever. And so Tucker Carlson comes and says, show us the evidence. If you're going to make this kind of claim, show us the evidence. Sidney Powell, thank you. So Sidney Powell, show us the evidence. And everyone lost their mind because Tucker Carlson dared to step out and ask for evidence against their side when they're supposed to be fair and balanced. Remember, does Fox News even pretend? Do they still have that slogan, fair and balanced? It's been a long time since I've watched. But the Sidney Powell fiasco. So Tucker comes out, asks for evidence, people lose their shit, and then the next day he comes out and he gives this really wishy-washy statement that just kind of blew my mind that anyone was taking it seriously, because at the end of the day, it still sounds like he's saying, it's fair for us to ask for the evidence, but let's look at it. So I saw it because Steven Crowder tweeted it out, and it's just, oh my God, it's so beautiful. So what you see is, here's the big thing to take away. After this clip, everyone started talking about, well, it's evidence. You can go to the Steven Crowder thread where he calls it damage control and see all the replies. And everyone is suddenly talking about, oh, well, it's a court case, so it's got to be kept under wraps. This is not a murder trial with sensitive circumstantial evidence that needs to be protected because it could be tainted in the public eye. Watergate, Snowden, Manning, the Pentagon Papers. These are all government scandals that did incredibly well because they were put in the media, because there was hard fact evidence, right? This is not that. This is a gambit. This is a fucking maneuver, an attempt to take the election. So let's look at Tucker Carlson. Did I call him Tucker Max earlier? I don't know. Let's look at Tucker Carlson. Just walking it back. Hopefully, let me get the volume all the way up for this.
Last night, in a segment about voter fraud and investigations into it, we told you about Sidney Powell, the former federal prosecutor, and her claim that roughly 7 million votes were secretly changed on election night by rigged vote-counting software. Well, in the last 24 hours since we did that, we've heard from a lot of people about that segment, including people in the White House and people close to the president. Like us, they have concluded that this election was not fair. Like us, they are willing to believe any explanation for what happened. Like us, they have not seen a single piece of evidence showing that software changed votes. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It might have happened. It means they haven't seen any evidence that it happened. And by they, we are including other members of Donald Trump's own legal team. They have not seen Powell's evidence either. No testimony from employees inside the software companies, no damning internal documents, no copies of the software itself. So that's where we are. Sidney Powell came on Fox this morning and suggested we may not have to wait much longer. I fully expect, she says, that we will be able to prove all of it in a court within the next 2 weeks. Well, as far as we're concerned, that is great news. If Sidney Powell can prove the technology companies switched millions of votes and stole a presidential election, she will have almost single-handedly uncovered the greatest crime in the history of this country, and no one will be more grateful for that than us.
So this is actually more Weasley than just outright walking it back and saying we were wrong. This is way more Weasley. Why? Because he's still setting the stage so that he can be exonerated if people were to try to accuse him of walking it back. Because he's still saying no one has seen this. He goes out and he goes out of his way to list members of the Trump staff, cabinet, team, whatever, that have not seen this evidence either. And he's very emphatic on that part. They haven't even seen it. But we would love it if they do prove this. Like, he is sitting dead center in that median. And so, it's really funny, though, to watch the people who follow this on the right side, the conservative side, who follow this and took it as a full-on backtrack. Because he's still asking for evidence. All he's doing is just adding a few extra qualifiers that said, hey, that evidence might come up and we'll be okay when it does. It's just, oh, fuck, man. Have some spine. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the dumbest image I have seen. Check this out. So I have a thing called sources, right? So before first, let's go ahead and let's look at this. All right. So the dumbest image I have seen on the fucking internet this weekend. Fraud checklist. It's a fraud checklist, and it's a list of a bunch of shit that isn't actually fraud, but it's called a fraud checklist, right? So, you know, the voter fraud term, which usually means someone fraudulently trying to vote, either signing someone else's ballot for them or filling out a dead relative's ballot, or someone is sending in a bunch of fake ballots that end up getting counted, whatever version of voter fraud, like those are voter fraud, right? Some of these things in here, a lot of these things in here aren't voter fraud. They would be corruption. They would be misconduct. They would be election theft. There wouldn't be voter fraud. To get really pedantic about it. Let's see, if I Google voter fraud, electoral fraud comes up. Electoral fraud, sometimes referred to as election fraud, election manipulation, voter fraud, or vote rigging, involves illegal interference with the process of an election, either by increasing the vote share of a favored candidate, depressing the vote share of rival candidates, or both. So voter rigging would apply here. Voter fraud, maybe if dead voters. Electoral fraud, though, seems to be what this is going for. But I'm only being pedantic about it because it's such a stupid fucking thing. I guess I don't need to be pedantic about it. So let's just go ahead. Let's jump to it. Now let's talk about Tim Pool's subreddit getting off on this. So very heated discussion in one of these threads that ended up getting deleted. I wish I'd covered this yesterday so we could have that. But let's go ahead and just let's take this image and break it down. I have something. It's a little crazy, but on Tim Pool subreddit's claim of voter fraud, I went line by line and I got these things called sources. And I think it's very important that we go through these sources. Now, I think I only have one Snopes in here, but I kept it in here because I know that there's a certain side of the internet that likes to get really pissy when they see a Snopes link. Huh, that doesn't prove anything. Snopes has been liberal for years. So there is a Snopes link in here. But just so they couldn't like latch onto that, though they might try to still. So they can't latch onto that. I did bring in other sources. So let's go line by line. Fraud checklist. Dead voters confirmed. Actually. Fact check. Now, so dead voters. So here's the other thing about this image. It's super vague, right? You see dead voters, corrupted tabulation software. Some of these are specific, like Dominion Exec, part of Biden's team. 28 state senates vote overseas, sent overseas for counting. Observers illegally removed. There have been complaints about observers in a few states. We'll talk about them. But which one? What are mathematical impossibilities confirmed? Like, what sane person looking for fraud that wants to see it, that wants to see Trump win, that believes voter fraud happened or election rigging happened, who sees that on there and doesn't know what it refers to, but still goes, yep, mathematical impossibilities? That's the type of person this image is catered to. The kind that isn't going to question this shit. The kind that might have vaguely heard about something with regard to Venezuela or, Dominion. And like, oh, yeah, I've been hearing about those systems being real fucked up. That's who this image is for. And then it gets shared on Facebook. And then your fucking grandma and mom have to fucking fight with you at Thanksgiving about this. Which better be over Zoom. Or that grandma won't be around for Christmas. Okay, dead voters. So I just made some assumptions. So let's go ahead first with the CNN article. I know it's the lamestream media. Fact check. Evidence undermines Trump campaign's claims of dead people voting in Georgia. With CNN and other media outlets, including Fox News, having called the election for former Vice President Joe Biden, President Donald Trump and his allies continue to argue the results were somehow fraudulent. On Wednesday, the Trump campaign claimed that the identities of 4 deceased people were used to vote in Georgia. Let's stop there to point something out. The Republican report that studied voter fraud and found a handful of instances never said no instance has ever occurred ever. It said there has been no substantial occurrence of voter fraud ever, which means that there is never anything to any extent that has ever impacted the election. And the idea that it happened in 2020 when the world's eyes were on this election, it's the most important election in history. Both sides are keeping their fucking lids peeled for something to go wrong. And this is the time where we see it so widespread that thousands of votes are being fraudulently cast and counted. Fuck off. The campaign tweeted out the names of the 4 deceased former residents of Georgia. But pointing out here that we're talking about 4 fucking cases right now, right? The campaign tweeted out the names of 4 deceased former residents of Georgia, claiming that a ballot was cast in each one's names in the 2020 election. The campaign also put out a news release that day with the same allegations, which were repeated later that evening on Fox News by host Tucker Carlson, our boy Tucker. Facts first. County officials debunked 2 of these allegations, telling CNN that the ballots for 2 of the named individuals were not cast in 2020. Officials are aware of the 2 other allegations and are looking into these names. One of the people listed by the Trump campaign was from Nicholson, Georgia. The county's election director, Jennifer Logan, told CNN that the claim this person's identity had been used to vote in last week's presidential election was not true. Logan said the person, quote, was removed from voter rolls in 2003, end quote, when they passed away. Logan noted that someone with the same name but spelled slightly differently did legally vote in the county this year. Another of the 4 people listed was from Newton County, Georgia, where the Board of Elections told CNN the individual had been removed from voter rolls when they died and did not vote in 2020. Phil Johnson, the chairman of the board, explained that the widow of the deceased man had cast her ballot using her husband's name with Mrs. as the prefix, causing the confusion. I am very disappointed that anyone would make an allegation like that without checking it out, Johnson said. I am too. The problem we're having right now is that there is a disproportionate amount of people who believe there is something screwy with this election to reality. This is suspicion that the conservatives can capitalize on in 4 years. It's going to be Tea Party 2.0, and it's all based on bullshit. Let's go with this AP. I think this one actually stays up a bit with us. Oh, God. I can't click the sides without clicking a link. Fuck you. USA. I'm sorry. USA Today, not AP. Deceased. Fact check. False claims that deceased Michigan man voted in 2020. While the screenshots posted on social media are real and can be replicated, Michigan's Secretary of State office debunked the claim as misinformation, and USA Today found evidence to support that. Let's see if there are more deceased voters. By the way, every time I type, the cat tries to come over and get on my lap because he knows that my hands are down and I can't push him away. Fact check. Claim that Pennsylvania case is proof of dead people voting is under investigation. While Pennsylvania's ballot tracker does show a recorded mail-in ballot for a Denise Ondick, county officials have yet to determine this was an instance of voter fraud. Moreover, experts say voter fraud involving the deceased is rare. Again, we talk about this before. The zombie voter thing comes up every election. It does. Even when a Republican wins, the zombie voter thing comes up. It's never been a problem. It's never been a problem because it's never occurred in any scale that has impacted an election. So again, with the vague claim of dead voters, see, hello Taco. With the vague claim of dead voters, checkmark confirmed, we need to know what dead voters they're talking about. And unfortunately, this stunning image does not provide that information. Let's talk about corrupted tabulation software. So again, that was vague. So let's talk about the voting machines. Now, if we go off what Sidney Powell was saying, the implication from that news conference was that someone could have just gone in and changed the votes. Something you also will be seeing a lot of are people sending around this article, this news clip from 2019. It's like a CBS news clip from 2019 where Dominion voting systems are being hacked. This is a very boomer moment because these people don't know what penetration testing is. And for those who aren't somewhat familiar with cybersecurity, penetration testing is when you take a system and you test it. You see how much you can hack it, and then you fix the hacks. You fix the vulnerabilities. It's a very common practice. So the fact that in 2019, Dominion systems were opened to hackers to penetration test is a testament to the integrity of that company and how much they actually gave a shit about providing a secure, safe voting mechanism. Let us continue. What's up with it? So we'll assume they're talking about Dominion voting machines. Fact check. Dominion voting machines didn't delete votes from Trump, switched them to Biden. The claim, Dominion voting systems deleted votes for Donald Trump, switched votes to Biden. Multiple conservative news sources have claimed this week that vote counting software from Dominion voting systems deleted votes for President Donald Trump or switched votes to President-elect Joe Biden. OAN, there we go. OAN's Lilia Fifield made the claim on air earlier this week, per a clip on Mediate. Quote, election systems across the country are found to have deleted millions of votes cast for President Trump, she said. According to an unaudited analysis of data obtained from Edison Research, states using Dominion voting systems may have switched as many as 435,000 votes from President Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And the author also finds another 2.7 million Trump votes appear to have been deleted by Dominion, including almost 1 million truckloads in Pennsylvania alone. Truckloads. Fact or fiction? We are fact-checking the news and sending it to your inbox. Sign up. Oh. Similar claims appear on Gateway Pundit, though it credits the findings to the website thedonald.win. My mom linked me that site the other day. Whose author also cites Edison Research. Trump himself then magnified the claim. Report, Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States using Dominion voting systems switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden, he wrote on Twitter. His son, Donald Trump Jr., also implied that Dominion voting systems had improperly tallied votes for Biden in a post on Instagram. What's the difference between Dominion voting machine and Hunter Biden? Nothing. They both give 10% to the big guy, the post read. God. OANN, the Gateway Pundit, the White House, and Trump Jr. have not responded to requests for comment from USA Today. Government experts agree there were no deleted or changed votes, including by Dominion. By the way, let's remind ourselves that Donald Trump fired the man in charge of cybersecurity for the elections who was debunking a lot of the information that Donald Trump was putting out in real time. He fired that man. That's a little weird, unless, of course, you're into the deep state and then you think that's all real. And then, well, here we are. Government experts agree there are no deleted or changed votes, including by Dominion. A national coalition announced Thursday that there is no evidence that any voting software deleted or changed votes in last week's election, per USA Today. No evidence. You see, evidence is important because when you make unsubstantiated claims without evidence, it leads to people thinking something is real it isn't, and then we have to deal with that years down the road. It doesn't matter if your side wins or benefits from it, it's still wrong, and that's not how democracy works. In fact, the security group, which includes the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and the National Association of State Election Directors, described the election as the most secure in American history. There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised, the coalition concluded. We don't have to continue with this article, but we're going to. Because they're going to people, if I stop there, there are people who have stopped listening, but we're going to keep going for the people that want to know more. It added that all the states with close results have paper records of each vote that allow for a recount if necessary. This is an added benefit for security and resilience, the coalition wrote. This process allows for the identification and correction of any mistakes or errors. CISA Director Chris Krebs also retweeted a message from election law expert David Becker that condemned, quote, wild and baseless claims about voting machines, end quote, according to CBS News. I believe that Chris Krebs is who Trump fired. Edward Perez, an election technology expert at the OSET Institute, a nonprofit that studies voting infrastructure, told the New York Times that claims about Dominion voting machines are misinformation at best, and in many cases, they are outright disinformation. I'm not aware of any evidence of specific things or defects in the Dominion software that would lead one to believe that votes have been recorded or counted incorrectly, Perez said. Dominion itself categorically denies claims. Dominion Voting Systems released a statement this week to deny the claims that its machines had deleted or changed votes. Dominion Voting Systems categorically denies false assertions about vote switching issues with our voting systems, the statement read. Vote deletion/switching assertions are completely false. The statement also addressed some specific details of allegations from Trump and the Gateway pundit. Dominion calls the claim from Trump that its machines deleted 941,000 votes for him in Pennsylvania alone impossible. And that's because Dominion only serves 14 counties in the state, which produced a total of 1.3 million votes, 52%, or 676,000 of which went to Trump. That only leaves 624,000 other votes, fewer than what Trump claims were switched. It's almost like he didn't do the math or any sort of research, or like they don't care about that. Edison Research created no such report about switching votes or about switched votes. The statement from Dominion Voting Systems also noted that Edison Research, a firm that OANN and Gateway Pundit cited for their stories, has refuted claims that it produced any data to support allegations of vote switching. Larry Rosen, the president of Edison Research, told the Dispatch Fact Check that it never produced any data to that effect. Edison Research created no such report, and we are not aware of any voter fraud. Holy shit! Isolated incidents in Michigan, Georgia, not indicative of wider issues with Dominion. A few, though not all, of the counties in Michigan and Georgia that experienced minor issues on election day used voting systems made by Dominion. But the errors were not glitches with the machine, and there is no indication that the software affected the vote count. In Michigan, inaccuracies in 2 counties were due to human errors, not software issues, per statements from the Michigan Department of State. Just 1 county used software from Dominion. As with other isolated user errors that have occurred in the reporting of unofficial results both in this and previous elections, this is not a result of any intentional misconduct by an election official or because of software or equipment malfunction or failing to work properly, the statement read. And in 1 Georgia county, an apparent problem with Dominion software delayed officials' reportings of the vote tallies, but did not affect the actual vote count, per the New York Times. Our rating, in short, TLDR, I'm adding that in, false. Based on our research, the claim that Dominion voting systems deleted votes for Donald Trump or switched votes to Joe Biden is false. A national election security coalition announced on Thursday that, quote, there is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised, end quote. Other experts and Dominion itself also condemned these claims. And then they give their sources. USA Today, CBS News, New York Times, more lamestream media, Dominion Voting Systems, Dispatch, Fact Check, and Michigan Department of State. How do you walk away from that bullet point about corrupted tabulation software? How do you walk away from that bullet point after hearing that and still think it's true? I would like to know. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know, since it seems that the conservative side that disagrees with everything I said is the most vocal. Yep. Again, that's fact-checked here as well in this USA Today piece. Cool. So I think that covers that. Let's continue. Next claim. Next confirmed green checkmark fraud checklist claim. Dominion executive part of Biden's team. Let's go to the Google sheet, shall we? Oh, Reuters. Can't trust them, can we? Well, I guess we have to do what we can. Fact check. Smartmatic CEO is not on Biden's team. Smartmatic CEO or software is not on Dominion voting machines. Social media users have been sharing content online that claims the chief executive officer of Smartmatic, a company that manufactures voting machines, is on Biden's political team. This claim is false. An example can be seen here. Oh, it's Facebook. Fuck that. Oh, by the way, if I'm talking about the wrong thing, that's because this is a fucking shitty image. But I think this is exactly what it's talking about. I couldn't find anything else that made sense with that bullet point, except this literally debunked the fact that that executive doesn't even work for Dominion and that he's not on the team. Let's continue. One post reads, CEO Smartmatic software on Dominion voting machines is on Biden's current team. The claim that Smartmatic has software on Dominion voting machines is false. Smartmatic explains on its website here that Smartmatic and Dominion are competitors in the marketplace. Samira Saba, communications director for Smartmatic, told Reuters via email, Smartmatic has never owned any shares or had any financial stake in Dominion voting systems. Smartmatic has never provided Dominion voting systems with any software, hardware, or technology. Dominion Voting Systems, a company that supplies election technology, was used in some U.S. states and counties during this election. Saba confirmed that Smartmatic only provided technology and software to Los Angeles County for the 2020 presidential election. The chief executive officer of Smartmatic is Antonio Mujica, and public records do not suggest he has any relationship to Biden's campaign. Saba confirmed Antonio Mujica does not have, nor has he ever had, any relationship with the Biden team or campaign. Peter Neffinger, the chairman of Smartmatic's USA board, did join Biden's agency to review team under the Department of Homeland Security as a volunteer in November 2020. He is not the CEO of Smartmatic, however, as claimed in the post. Neffinger was able to join Biden's team as an independent volunteer. Biden's agency review team's page describes volunteers as individuals who are volunteering for the transition in their personal capacity. The claims likely confuse Neffinger's role as a board member for a CEO. Reuters fact check has previously debunked claims relating to Dominion and election fraud here and here. Verdict, false. Semantic Software is not on Dominion voting machines, and the CEO of Smartmatic is not on Biden's team. This article was produced by the Reuters fact check team. Read more, blah, 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 blah. Man. I wish facts cared more about my feelings, because my feelings are hurt, as we find there is no substantial corruption. But let us continue. We have many, many more bullet points. I know, you guys notice I didn't even click the Snopes link. All the Snopes link just does is say that the claim is unsubstantiated. It's pretty cool. All right. 28 states sent votes overseas for counting. This was a new one. I actually hadn't heard this one until this. What's really weird is that there isn't a lot of coverage on this one. No thanks. I don't want whatever this shit is. So we're looking at KARE 11. I don't know where KARE is as far as a local news station. KARE news station. It's an NBC affiliated television stations in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Cool. Okay. So let's see what it let's go ahead and see what this has to say about it. Because again, this one there's very little information on. No evidence that presidential election votes were tallied overseas. President Trump's lawyers led a press conference that lasted more than an hour, but was light on evidence. Yes, it was. On Thursday, Rudy Giuliani led a team of Trump campaign lawyers in a nearly 2-hour press conference. They cast doubt on the use of voting machines and claimed that ballots from the November 3rd presidential election were counted outside the United States. The question: were U.S. ballots cast on voting machines actually counted in foreign countries? The answer: there is currently no evidence that U.S. votes were sent to another country and counted there. What the fuck? Common sense having individual would think, yeah, that's exactly what the United States is going to do. We are going to outsource the counting of ballots to another fucking country. Our election. Where does that make sense? I can't even imagine any voter commission allowing that. But we're entertaining this stupid idea for what reason? By the way, it's 21 degrees in Minneapolis. That's fucking cold. It's 53 here in Maryland. You like how I give those little time and date and weather updates as if you guys are listening to this in real time in a place where it really matters. Most of you are going to hear this through a VOD. The answer: there's currently no evidence that the U.S. votes were sent to another country and counted there. Data from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency and Verified Voting, a nonpartisan nonprofit that studies election systems and their security, show that most counties process and count their ballots within the county. They also show a series of redundancies that would allow any vote tampering to be caught. For a second, I had a moment because this is so fucking stupid. I had a moment where I thought I might have misread this entire thing and they just said sent to other counties. And so they were implying that it might have gone to a pro-Biden county that counted the votes for Trump as Biden votes. Like, my mind went there because it's trying to find some sanity in this stupid claim. What we found: Verified Voting keeps a running map of all voting equipment in the U.S. broken down by county. It separates the balloting into 3 categories. First are hand-marked ballots, a physical ballot that a voter fills out and turns in. They're counted by hand or scanned by election staff. Second are ballot marking devices and systems. You vote on an election system that spits out a filled-out printed ballot, which is then scanned by election staff. And then 3, there are direct recording electronic systems. Sorry, cat alert. The votes are cast on and tallied in the same machine. Most can give a paper count in case of an audit or recount. The common thread is that they are all counted in the county. They have redundancies like paper trails in case questions arise. On its rumor versus reality page, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, again, a government agency where Trump had to fire the person for fact-checking him, explains that these redundancies ensure the election is secure and the voting machines are accurate and reliable. Bottom line, we're just going to skip to that. Votes are counted by each county in the United States, and they all have safeguards to ensure accuracy. There is no evidence that 2020 presidential election votes were counted outside the country. Wow. Brilliant reporting. Thank you so much. Fuck me. Okay. Observers illegally removed. We talked about this in another video, but obviously we have to talk it again for the Tim Poolites. So the claim is that observers were illegally removed. The reality is no observer was illegally removed. There was the Detroit TCF Center where the challengers from both parties were at max capacity. So no one else was allowed in the building. But there were a bunch of Trump folks out there shouting, "Stop the count," and video and filming and taking pictures, whatever, of the people. It's a little intimidating, right? And so they put up they put up the poster boards. I think that's what this is talking about, but I got 2 articles about what might have happened when it comes to observers being illegally removed. So let's go to WAPO first, shall we? I had to fucking register for this goddamn website, by the way, so you're welcome. I registered for this and the Blaze just so I can bring you good news and then some entertaining content to fact check. The Trump campaign was not denied access to Philadelphia's ballot count. So maybe that's what we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about the Philly one. The facts. We're just going to skip to the facts. President-elect Joe Biden won Pennsylvania by more than 80,000 votes. A better showing than... When's this article from? All right. 80,000 votes. A better showing than Trump's 44,000 vote margin in 2016. The Trump campaign has filed lawsuits seeking to throw out, a.k.a. disenfranchise American voters. See how the American, like, just kind of slipped in there? Throw out 680,000 mail-in ballots in the state, split almost evenly between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. At first, the campaign argued the ballots should be chucked because Trump observers were not allowed to monitor the counting. If true, that would have been a violation of Pennsylvania's election code, which says that one authorized representative of each candidate in an election and one representative from each political party shall be permitted to remain in the room in which the absentee ballots and mail-in ballots are pre-canvassed and canvassed. The Trump campaign had at least one representative inside the Philadelphia Convention Center as the city's 350,000 mail-in ballots were being processed, and the allegations that the campaign was denied access were later deleted from one of Trump's lawsuits. However, Trump and his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, keep repeating this false claim. Giuliani told a federal court Tuesday that the allegations were still active, before conceding they had been deleted and then adding they would be restored. An amended lawsuit filed Wednesday asserts that it was physically impossible to view the envelopes or ballots, and that in Philadelphia County, poll watchers and canvass representatives were denied access altogether. Who knows what legal maneuver or about face is coming next? But Trump's tweet is demonstrably false. He wrote, "They didn't even allow Republican observers into the building to watch," and then appended another tweet from a reporter quoting from a court opinion. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ruled against Trump in a 5-2 decision Tuesday, finding that local election officials legally exercised their power in setting up a waist-high barrier and buffer zone of 15 to 18 feet between the campaign observers and the election workers inside the Philadelphia Convention Center. Had Trump read the tweet he was quoting, he would have seen language from the Supreme Court opinion stating that these conditions allowed candidate representatives to observe the board conducting its activities as prescribed under the election code. Had Trump read the opinion itself or inquired with his own campaign, he would have learned that a lawyer, Jeremy A. Mercer, was representing him inside the room and monitoring the election workers' activities in Philadelphia. I want to take this moment, by the way, to say we might do a stream on it tomorrow, but go out there and read some of these opinions in court transcripts, because judges are outright saying, as a member of the bar, you are telling me there is election fraud, you are telling me there is voter fraud, and the attorneys say, no, not at all. It's a little weird when they're not on TV, when they don't make their living making television appearances. Even Rudy Giuliani in court has said completely different things. And it's not some legal strategy. Don't go down that dumbass rabbit hole. It's because they know that they are making a case they don't have substantiation for. They're just hoping that something sticks. Had Trump tuned in to another court case in Pennsylvania, he would have heard a campaign lawyer telling a federal judge that Trump had a non-zero number of people in the room. According to Attorney Mercer's candid testimony, which the trial court accepted as credible, from his vantage point, he could view the entirety of the pre-canvassing and canvassing process, the state Supreme Court opinion says. Clearly, then, Attorney Mercer had the opportunity to observe the mechanics of the canvassing process. Specifically, Attorney Mercer witnessed board employees inspecting the back of ballot envelopes containing the voter's declaration before sending them on for processing, witnessed ballots being removed from their secrecy envelopes, and naked ballots which had been delivered to the board without a secrecy envelope being segregated from the ballots which arrived with in such envelopes, saw the ballot processing methods utilized by the board were not destroying the ballot envelopes containing the voter's declaration, and perceived that the ballot secrecy envelopes were being preserved during their processing. Mercer stated that he could not see everything, however, and the Trump campaign argued that he couldn't meaningfully observe the proceedings. Although observers could walk freely behind the barrier, the first row of tables was 15 to 18 feet away. Each of the 3 rows had 15 tables, so that the farthest were about 100 feet away from the observation area. The lower court in Pennsylvania had reduced the buffer to 6 feet, but that decision was overturned by the state Supreme Court. The court indicated that Mercer could see enough to monitor the process, as Pennsylvania law allows, but not enough to challenge individual ballots, which he could not legally do. Quote, although Attorney Mercer related that he could not view the actual declarations on the ballot envelopes, nor examine individual secrecy envelopes for improper markings, this information would only be necessary if you were making challenges to individual ballots during the pre-canvassing and canvassing process. But such challenges are not permissible under the election code, etc., etc., etc. This got 4 Pinocchios. According, I didn't know Washington Post did that. So again, we have to go back to our thing. We have to circle the wagons for a second and reconvene with our fraud checklist. So the claim is observers illegally removed. I think I'm pretty comfortable saying that it's talking about this case right here. But if we go to PolitiFact, we got a nice old pants on fire for the claim Pennsylvania and Michigan didn't allow our poll watchers and or observers. So let's go with the if your time is short, since we already read it through the PA one. Republican election observers have been allowed to observe the canvassing of ballots in both Pennsylvania and Michigan, state officials said. PolitiFact previously fact-checked false claims about the ballot counting in Philadelphia and Detroit, 2 cities targeted by Trump campaign litigation. Both cities have allowed election observers from both parties to monitor the process. There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud that would require hundreds of thousands of ballots to be invalidated. I want to go back and revisit this, what we said at the beginning of this segment, which was we've covered Michigan before. The TCF Center, or whatever it's called, was where you saw those boards being put up. No one was kicked out of the room. No one from either side. They had the max number of challengers from both parties, which is like 134 or some shit. They had the max number of challengers from both parties in that room. Everyone on the outside of that room was screaming, stop the count, and banging and harassing and taking pictures and videos. So they put up the boards. There were still the witnesses in there. The implication of otherwise is a patently false statement and is nothing but disinformation and an outright lie. And you should be ashamed of the people you follow and respect for propagating that idea. For a lot of these ideas, you should be ashamed. And I am explicitly speaking to the Tim Pool subreddit. How many of these things did Tim Pool tweet without even reading? How many of these ideas did Tim Pool propagate? You guys hold him on a pedestal as a journalist of integrity who doesn't give a shit about party lines and will say the truth no matter what. But what good is that truth if it is not fact-checked and validated by reality? Unless you follow a conspiracy theorist, there's a little more concern and care that needs to be taken when you are acting as a journalistic figure that is going to have millions of people see the shit that you put out. You have a responsibility to do that in a responsible way. Okay. So observers illegally removed. Let's go ahead and cross out that confirmed, and let's put a debunked. DEBOONKED. I'm a debunker today. All right, what's the next claim? Mathematical impossibilities. Again, this one was kind of like, what the fuck are you talking about? Actually, never mind. I even put that here. What the fuck is this claim? I think there were some claims about numbers not adding up, like dead voters in Michigan or voter registration numbers. We'll figure this one out and we'll touch it later, because every time something comes up that's a mathematical impossibility, hold on, I'm gonna break character for a second and read chat because maybe they can fill me in. Worries says they talked about votes not following Benford's law, but that's easily debunked. If you can give me a link to that, we'll go over that. I really appreciate it. So we'll put this one on hold. I'll go ahead and highlight that in red, and then we'll talk about it. We have a Reuters link. Cool. Okay, cool. Sweet. All right, so there's something called Benford's Law. All right, so thank you guys for saving the stream, Easy NXT and Worries DK. And also everyone else who I'm not reading, I apologize. I like to go down through the list before we talk about, before we talk in chat. Okay, so anyway, claim. Let's restart. The claim. Mathematical impossibilities. There's some conspiracy theory music. I play the X-Files theme, but then I get DMCA'd. Fact check. Deviation from Benford's Law does not prove election fraud. Social media users have been sharing posts that say a mathematical rule called Benford's Law provides clear proof of fraud in the U.S. presidential election. However, research papers and academics consulted by Reuters consistently say that deviation from Benford's Law does not prove election fraud took place. This seems like a really juicy article, but I'm going to jump to the verdict. False. The degree to which Benford's Law can be used as an indicator of electoral fraud has been debated by academics, but the application of the rule to the leading digit of local vote tallies is problematic, and apparent deviation from the law cannot be used alone to prove electoral fraud, experts say. This article was produced by blah, 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 blah. We'll give it a little bit. Hold on. Benford's Law says that in many naturally occurring sets of numbers, the first digits of these numbers, e.g. the ones in the 15, e.g. the 1 in 15, are not evenly distributed. Measurements with the lower first digit occur more frequently. 1 is the first digit in a number about 30% of the time, while 9 begins less than 5% of numbers. 9 begins less than 5% of numbers. In certain data sets ranging from rainfall amounts to town populations, the numbers follow a Benford's Law distribution. Deviation of data from Benford's Law has been examined in areas such as finance to detect if something is not right, for example, fraud, mistakes, or misstatements. The posts, such as those here and here, what are we looking at? It's Facebook. Of course it's fucking Facebook. Isn't it weird that all these things that are misinformation or disinformation or just dumb shit go to Facebook? If you're getting your points from Facebook, that should be a red flag. These posts show graphs that compare candidates' vote tallies by leading digit to the expected distribution according to Benford's Law in order to contend that Biden's vote tallies do not follow Benford's Law, but Trump's do. Okay, so basically, we'll finish a couple more paragraphs. So now I'm kind of getting. So the idea is that Benford's Law is about the distribution of numbers and the way numbers should look in a data set. And some people are implying that irregularities in the tabulation numbers or the reporting numbers don't match Benford's Law, and therefore this is when we're really doing like some like Jeff Goldblum conspiracy shit. Ow. Ow. Posts state that Benford's Law is a test that has been used before to detect fraud. Here, captions on the post include Joe Biden's votes violate Benford's Law. It's easy to win if you cheat. Statistically impossible odds. How math doesn't even agree with their faux victory. Yo, dat elephant. Biden's vote tallies apparently violate Benford's Law. Everyone else follow across the country except for Biden in key races. This is a test for catching election fraud used by State Department and forensic accountants. Reuters sought comment from experts regarding these claims. Theodore P. Hill, professor emeritus of mathematics at Georgia Tech, Atlanta, cautioned that regardless of the distribution uncovered, the application of Benford laws would not provide definitive evidence that fraud took place. Oh, but it didn't say that fraud did not take place, one would counter. First, I'd like to stress that Benford's Law cannot be used to, quote, prove fraud, unquote, end quote. He told Reuters by email. It's only a red flag test that can raise doubts, e.g. the IRS has been using it for decades to ferret out fraudsters, but only by identifying suspicious entries, at which time they put the auditors to work on the hard evidence. Whether or not a data set follows BL proves nothing. I think we can quit with this one. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the list. Boom. We can unread that. And I'm gonna make this available. I'm gonna make this doc. I don't know a way to secretly make a doc available, but I will make this available to you guys. Is Control K a hyperlink for this? Yep, it is. Oh, look at that. Google stealing Microsoft shortcuts. Okay. Wisconsin, 342, 143,000 Biden ballot dump confirmed. I thought we were done with this one, but apparently not. All right. So the claim, Wisconsin, 3:42 a.m. Like, do you remember? Oh, God, that was such an annoying thing to wake up to. It's just like conspiracy theories went out. Trump allies are among the frequent purveyors of election misinformation. Let's see if this is a giant debunking article. Nope, it's not. Cool. President Trump and his allies have continuously amplified false and unsubstantiated claims about voting as they wage a multi-front assault on the legitimacy of the 2020 election. You would say that, mainstream media, New York Times. A pre-election analysis from the Election Integrity Partnership found that posts from 20 Twitter accounts, including 13 verified and Mr. Trump himself, accounted for a fifth of all shares of voting-related misinformation in its database. Very interesting. I'm gonna save that link. Of the 13 verified accounts, all but 3 had tweeted at least one claim of election misinformation this week. Mr. Trump was one of the most frequent purveyors. This week, he falsely accused Detroit of reporting more votes than people. It did not. Wrongly declared that Michigan refused to certify the election results. It is not scheduled to do so until Monday, today. Claimed a big victory after Nevada Commission declined to verify the results of a local race that didn't even affect the presidential election, and shared an image reporting to show that President-elect Joseph R. Biden Jr. received a dump of more than 143,000 votes in Wisconsin a day after the election at 3:42 a.m., quote, when they learned he was losing badly, end quote. Milwaukee, a Democratic stronghold, continued to count votes throughout that night. Those 4 false posts alone amassed more than 370,000 retweets. So this is about just the spread of disinformation. There's no real fact checking in here, but let's click this article. I have 2 other articles as well. We're going to move that. Check out this visual. So the New York Times keeps a log of every change to their presidential vote tallies. We believe they get their info from Dominion Clarity. Now check out the wild ride in Wisconsin, where real Donald Trump is leading by 51% all night until a dump at 3:42 a.m. So that's the link to the claim. Okay, an unusually easy Trump debunking from WAPO. There was no suspicious vote dump in Wisconsin. I'm in the United States, Breezy. We will start not by debunking President Trump's latest, or more accurately, one of Trump's latest, claims that something untoward happened in the 2020 presidential election, but instead by contextualizing his efforts. I actually don't give a fuck about that. Let's get to the part where he debunks. So what they're doing is they're going to talk about probably the way that the election went and how the efforts from the Trump campaign, what they're doing right now, what the strategy is with spreading this distrust. But I want to get to the part about the dump. Consider the alternative to Trump's allegation, by the way. If it take out Trump's suspicious votes, Milwaukee is suddenly a remarkable pro-Trump place. In fact, the increase in votes cast for Biden relative to Trump in Milwaukee was more modest than it was in Dane or Waukesha. Biden received about 10% more votes than did Clinton in Milwaukee, while Trump gained 8% more votes than he did 4 years ago there. In Waukesha, Biden received 31% more votes, blah, blah, blah. So to recap, the votes came a few hours after polls closed. They came from the state's most popular counties. The media documented them being delivered. The margin recorded was in line with the shifts across the state. I want to see the part about the ballots. I really don't want to read this whole fucking article. Okay, I guess we have to read the whole article. Good morning, good morning, good morning. All right. We will start not by debunking President Trump's latest, or more accurately, one of Trump's latest claims that something untoward happened in the 2020 presidential election, but instead by contextualizing his efforts. Trump wants the obvious will of the electorate to be disregarded and for himself to be given another 4 years in office despite his losing both the national popular vote and the electoral vote. To do so, he's throwing out as many allegations of fraud as he possibly can, just this absolute blizzard of spaghetti strands being chucked at every nearby wall. None stick, but Trump doesn't need them to. He just wants to be able to point at the blizzard itself and say, hey, how can we trust the election results when all these suspicious things happened? It's like Tom Brady losing the Super Bowl and then spending multiple weeks elevating every possible crackpot theory he comes across to accuse his opponents of cheating, accuse the playing field of being flawed, accuse the ball of being overinflated, accuse the weather of being disadvantageous, accuse the fans of being too loud or too quiet or both or neither, accuse everyone of everything that might get his fans to think, maybe Brady actually won the Super Bowl. Or better yet, to get the NFL to decide for some reason that maybe Brady should be given the Lombardi Trophy, after all, to change the history books. The best course of action is to simply ignore the protests, to recognize them for the nonsense that they are, but sometimes it's useful to simply step back and demonstrate how utterly ridiculous the claims are, to grab a piece of spaghetti midair, if you will, and dissect it. That analogy doesn't work, but you get the point. Here, for example, is a piece of spaghetti. Trump flavored. Look at this, Wisconsin. A day after the election, Biden receives a dump of 143,379 votes at 3:42 a.m. when they learned he was losing badly. That is unbelievable. It is not unbelievable. It is nonsense. What's depicted here isn't votes being added the following day. It is votes being counted in the night of the election. As Texas Monthly's Christopher Hooks pointed out, this surge in votes appears to have been nothing more than vote results from Milwaukee County, the most populous in the state, being formally registered. Polls closed in Wisconsin at 8 p.m., and Milwaukee County began tallying its results. In the middle of the night, the county's election commissioner got into a police car to deliver the count. The media was present and recorded the scene. This is a moment Milwaukee Elections Commissioner delivers vote totals to the courthouse. And it's at 4:12 a.m. November 4th. And it's a video. And I'm going to sneeze. Didn't happen. The total in Trump's tweet wasn't all of the votes from Milwaukee County, but it would account for most of them. Joe Biden won the county by nearly 183,000 vote margin overall, with most of them registering as soon as Milwaukee votes were added to the state's total. Just like that, Trump's lead eroded, because ballots from a county that ended up constituting about 14% of the total votes in the state were suddenly added. Nor is the margin suspicious. Let's compare county-level results from 2020 to the results in 2016. In most counties, 50 of 72, the margin shifted to Biden's advantage relative to 4 years ago. That includes the state's three most populous counties, Milwaukee, Waukesha, and Dane. In general, though, the margins in each county were similar to what they were 4 years ago. Hillary Clinton won Milwaukee County by 163,000 votes. Biden won it by 183,000 votes. Trump on Waukesha County by 63,000 votes in 2016. He won it by 56,000 votes in 2020. Each of these is about 12% change. Take out Trump's, quote, suspicious votes in Milwaukee is suddenly a remarkably pro-Trump place. In fact, the increase in votes cast for Biden relative to Trump in Milwaukee was more modest than it was in Dane or Waukesha. Biden received about 10% more votes than did Clinton in Milwaukee, while Trump got 8% more votes than he did 4 years ago there. In Waukesha, Biden received 31% more votes than Clinton, while Trump improved 12%. In Dane County, the increases were 20% and 11% respectively. So to recap, the votes came a few hours after polls closed. They came from the state's most populous county. The media documented them being delivered, and the margin recorded was in line with the shifts across the state. Hot fucking damn. Consider the alternative to Trump's allegation, by the way. If that dump of ballots hadn't occurred, there would have been almost no votes tallied in Milwaukee County at all. While that would certainly please Trump, it would also certainly indicate that something weird had happened. There was the surge in votes made the results in the state obviously more accurate, not obviously less so. Anyway, this entire article is inadvertently doing exactly what Trump wants, treating these allegations as even possibly accurate. He wants us to pluck those strands of spaghetti out of the air and even point out how wrong they are, because we're talking about his strands of spaghetti. Trump lost. There's no evidence, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we know this. So I think it just highlights, it doesn't really give a direct, like, thing like the CEO thing does. It just shows how fucking absurd it is. The votes they're talking about are from one area for the most part. An area that if those votes were gone, it would just be that area not voting. That's what that dump ended up being. And the margins are completely reasonable when you actually look at the data. My goodness. All right. 15,000 plus ballots miscounted in Georgia. Now, I believe this is talking about the missing SD cards. So let's have a real quick rant before we look at the article. The missing SD cards weren't some malicious thing. If anyone has worked with any sort of technology system or any kind of machinery, and then something changes, you get a whole new system, you find that some things work better than others, and some things might not be as good. One of the things that happened here from workers across the state that use these machines, they said that the old machines used to really scream at you and give big red flags when an SD card went missing. This one had the red flag system. It just wasn't as obnoxious. And therefore, 2 SD cards went missing? Sure, there were a few thousand votes on those, and that's important because every vote matters, right? Except for one side that only wants the votes to matter that help them. But regardless, that's not fraud. There's no evidence of it being malicious. So let's dig into it, because I believe that's what this is. Trump allies are among the frequent purveyors. All right, we already went over that article. It just talks about people spreading misinformation. Oh, wait, did I click the same links from before? Yeah, I did. Sorry. 15K miscounted ballots. Atlanta News. Georgia vote discrepancies reconciled on last day of recount. Election officials corrected vote counting mistakes and explained an allegation by the Republican Party about miscounted DeKalb County ballots on Wednesday, the final day of Georgia's manual recount. The latest unofficial count puts Joe Biden 12,781 votes ahead of President Donald Trump, who gained about 1,400 votes this week that county election officials initially failed to count. There's no indication of broader problems beyond 3 counties that didn't load all votes from memory cards and 1 county that didn't rescan all ballots after an optical scanner was replaced because of a technical issue, said Gabriel Sterling, Georgia's voting system manager. 3 of the 4 counties had issues are Republican-leaning politically. When the recount and audit exposed issues, election workers fixed them before results are finalized, Sterling said. The system is working the way it's intended, Sterling said. These people are operating under the highest levels of stress in the most contentious election in their work life in the United States and in Georgia. So for the most part, they are doing a really good job on this. Other allegations about vote counting errors were caught before they had an impact beyond social media. That's the case with the claim made by Georgia Republican Party Chairman David Schaefer, who wrote on Twitter that the party's audit monitors found a form attached to a batch of votes in DeKalb County that had been miscalculated, which would have given Biden a tremendous lead. The Republican monitor wrote in an affidavit that after raising the issue, the count for the batch of recounted ballots was off by 2 votes, not the 9,626 that he had initially said. DeKalb election officials corrected the initial numbers before reporting that the actual recount figures to the state. This was a non-event, non-issue kind of thing. but it does help stir the pot to a degree, which is unfortunate, Sterling said. That's why we put the quality control measures in, to make sure that everything lines up and has a logical rationale behind it. A Republican member of DeKalb Election Board... Why is that fucking with me? A Republican member of the DeKalb Elections Board criticized Schaefer for leading voters to believe election workers had miscounted the ballots. This is a childish and irresponsible tweet, said DeKalb Elections Board member Bauki Vu. Sterling acknowledged that election officials will have to improve their processes to ensure that all memory cards that contain votes from optical scanners are accounted for. Missed memory cards caused initial vote counting errors in Douglas, Fayette, and Walton counties. In Floyd County, election workers didn't rescan about 2,600 ballots after replacing an optical scanner, he said. Initial reports that the problem in Floyd was related to a missed memory card weren't accurate. Those votes are being rescanned, counted, and added to statewide totals. The Biden campaign remained confident that they'll hold their lead in Georgia, which they did. So anyway, never ascribe to malice what can be ascribed to stupidity, something like that. Yeah, so I mean, in the sense that there were the miscounted ballots. Sure, you know what? We'll give them this one, but it's not voter fraud. It was human error. That's the spin. The idea that voter fraud checklist, 15,000 plus ballots miscounted in Georgia, and we know the margin for that lead is 12,000. So it makes it sound like, oh man, there was a win stolen from Donald Trump here. Didn't the margin widen for Biden? More voters than people in a county. Confirmed. Let's see what this one is. More voters than people in a county. Oh, we got a little USA Today action, a little Forbes action. Let's check these out. Wisconsin has more. Oh, fact check. So the whole article. Cool. Wisconsin has more registered voters than ballots cast. The claim. Wisconsin shows more counted votes than registered voters. Ballot counting remains underway in several key battleground states. While former Vice President Joe Biden appears to have won Wisconsin, some on social media are calling foul when looking at vote tallies. Wisconsin reporting 101+% voter turnout, reads a heading with a meme containing a chart tabulating the numbers of registered voters in select states and what percentage they comprise of the state's population. The meme then claims the number of Wisconsin votes counted as 3,170,206 and registered voters only at 3,129,000, indicating a discrepancy of a little over 41,000 between the two. Quote, the Democrats have officially committed election 2020 fraud. This crime is a felony and falls under 18 U.S. Code Chapter 115, sedition and treason, the text declares. The meme shared by Facebook user Mike Boss has received over 2,700 interactions and 2,500 shares since being posted on Wednesday. It has also gained significant attention elsewhere on Facebook as well as Twitter. What is Wisconsin's actual registered voter count? According to Wisconsin election commissions, there are 3,684,726 active registered voters as of November 1st. This figure, as well as denial that the state has more ballots than registered voters, was affirmed by the commission on its official Twitter account. Voter turnout is reported to have topped 3.2 million, the highest turnout Wisconsin has had since the 2004 election. The chart used in the Facebook image appears to be taken from a website called World Population Review, which claims its number of registered voters by state reflects 2020 and cites the U.S. Census Bureau's voting and registration page as a source. USA Today found the figure actually used is from the November 2018 election. It is important to note 2020 census results will not be available until late 2020 to early 2021. By late afternoon Wednesday, World Population Review updated its data and appears to have appropriately cited voter registration statistics available by each state. More blah, blah, blah. Our ruling false. We rate this claim false because it is not supported by our research. Oh, but not by your research, but by our research it is. So therefore, haha, checkmate. The number for registered Wisconsin voters stated by the Facebook image is incorrect and instead is confirmed to be at over 3.6 million as of November 1st, according to the Wisconsin Elections Commission, unless they are in the pocket of the deep state and the globalists. The commission has denied there being more ballots than registered voters. The total votes counted in the state has topped 3.2 million. There are 400,000 more voters that could have voted that didn't vote. The numbers make sense. Holy shit. Let's go ahead and let's take that and just fucking no. Now, I'm sorry. It says in a county. I'm sorry. It says in a county. Let's be charitable to the claim. Except, what county are they talking about? Are we talking about Detroit? Okay, cool. Let's go with Detroit because maybe they're talking about county. All right. I don't think it says Wisconsin, does it? Nope. In a county. Okay, cool. So if we're not talking about Wisconsin as a state in those claims, unless something got muddled, let's go ahead and talk about Detroit. Tell us, Joe Walsh from Forbes. No, Detroit did not report more votes than people. Top line, President Donald Trump is falsely claiming the city of Detroit reported more votes than people, a new conspiracy theory among the many he's advanced as he refused to accept defeat in the presidential election. But the incidents Trump cites to prove vote rigging in Michigan's largest city are actually minuscule errors by harried poll workers. Key facts. In a series of tweets on Tuesday and Wednesday, Trump basically accused Detroit, a majority black city and longtime Democratic stronghold, of counting more votes than residents, calling the result a giant scam and falsely declaring he won Michigan. In reality, Detroit reported 250,138 votes in the November 3rd election, according to unofficial results published by the city, which is fewer than half of Detroit's registered voters and just 37% of the city's total population as of 2019. Trump appears to be referring to, quote, out of balance, end quote, precincts where the number of votes counted is slightly different from the number of voters checked into a polling place. But these mismatches are not evidence of fraud and instead are usually routine errors like poll workers incorrectly scanning voters' names, failing to record spoiled ballots, or not noticing if a voter leaves the precinct without casting a ballot, city officials say. I want to stop here for a moment and to say this, a reminder of what we repeat every day. In 2016, because of Donald Trump's claims of voter fraud, because he refused to accept that he lost the popular vote, and it must have been illegal immigrants voting, a huge study was conducted. And in 40 years of election results, a handful of issues of voter fraud were found, right? Nothing substantial, nothing significant, nothing consequential. So when you see them talking about routine errors, try to not get sucked into some conspiracy theory land where, well, are they really routine? Those shouldn't be happening in a fair and honest democratic election. These are normal things that have already been studied by the Republicans that are fighting for Donald Trump to win through disinformation, misinformation, and absurd legal strategy. So keep that in mind at the very least. Detroit has reported only 357 mismatched votes across all out-of-balance precincts, Mayor Mike Duggan said, which is less than 0.2% of the total ballots cast citywide. Some 28% of Detroit's more than 600 precincts and absentee counting boards are out of balance without explanation, the Michigan Secretary of State's office told Forbes. But the Detroit Free Press reports most of these precincts were off by fewer than 4 votes. The end. We can stop there. Consider that debunked. Debunking has ceased for that one because it is over. Fake signatures accepted. Good Lord. Oh, man. I think some people are going to have a problem with this one, but we're going to factcheck.org. Trump's false claim about mail ballot signatures in Nevada. Again, this is another one that I don't believe it says the state. No, it just says fake signatures accepted. So the reader, should he be one like myself that wants to fact check, let us go on. Trump's false claims about mail ballot signatures in Nevada. At a rally in Vandalia, Ohio, President Trump falsely claimed that Nevada voters are not required to sign their mail. Oh, so this is from September, by the way. So what's the other one? The AP fact check is from November 16th. So it's, again, hard to tell, so we'll go with this one first. This is from September of this year. At a rally in Vandalia, Ohio, President Donald Trump falsely claimed that Nevada voters are not required to sign their mail ballots, and if they do sign them, the signatures don't have to be verified. The law requires mail ballots to include valid voter signatures, which must be verified by election officials. A law signed in August by Democratic Governor Steve Sisolak expanding mail voting expanding mail voting in the state did spell out in more detail than previous laws the procedures for dealing with suspect signatures and provisions for allowing voters to verify them. But it did not change the signature requirement. Trump, September 21st. They have in Nevada. The governor said he signed an order that they don't have to sign. We need no signature verification. Oh, that's great, because they couldn't get people to sign, so they said, we'll just send them in. Don't worry about it. This is a real affront to our democracy. This is a horrible thing that's going on. This is not the first time that the president has made false claim. For example, he also did so at the White House on August 5th. Trump, August 5th. And don't forget, if you look at what they're doing in Nevada, no signature. You take a look at that at the signature, and there's no verification of signature allowed. But there's no verification of signatures. So they don't even know who's going to sign this. They have literally a clause that you don't have to verify signatures. That they don't have to do it. And at a rally in Minden, Nevada on September 12th, he said they didn't have to have an authorized signature in Nevada. In fact, in a fact sheet on its website dealing with facts versus myths about the 2020 general election, the Nevada Secretary of State's office included 2 entries dealing with the question of signatures. First, it dealt with what they called myth number 4. Election officials in Nevada do not verify the voter signatures on the ballot return envelope before the ballot is counted. Nevada Secretary of State's office. Signature verification is performed on every ballot received. If the signature is missing or if the signature on the ballot return envelope does not match the signature on file for the voter, the ballot will not be counted until the voter verifies their signature. Then it turned to what it referred to as myth number 5. The bill recently passed in the Nevada legislature weakened Nevada's signature verification procedures. Nevada Secretary of State's office. While the bill did include language detailing how signature verification must be performed, the bill simply put into law the procedure that was already being followed for signature verification. The bill did not, quote, water down, end quote, or weaken the signature verification process. In short, TLDR, Trump made a lot of bullshit claims with regards to this. You can go through the link. I will link this in the comments for the Tim Pool folks that want to go through and debunk the debunking. AP fact check Trump's bogus claim about Biden win vaccine. Let's see. Let's go to signatures. Cool. Let's go to the top. Again, this is Associated Press. President Donald Trump is rebelling against Democrat Joe Biden's victory in the presidential election with denial, delay, and outright misrepresentation. Trump raged about widespread cases of fake ballots that aren't so and undertook legal challenges that even state GOP election officials say can't overcome Biden's lead. Over the weekend, he also misrepresented Georgia's process for verifying signatures on absentee ballot envelopes. Meanwhile, as the coronavirus surged nationwide, Trump said little about public safety measures. Instead, he tried to take full credit for drug maker Pfizer, blah, 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 blah. His assertion in both matters are untrue. A review of the past weekend's claims. Vaccine distribution... not going over that one. Let's see. Election. Trump. The consent decree signed by the Georgia Secretary of State with the approval of Governor Brian Kemp at the urging of Stacey Abrams makes it impossible to check and match signatures on ballots and envelopes, etc. They knew they were going to cheat, must expose real signatures. This is a tweet from Donald Trump. From last Saturday, I believe. The facts. There is nothing in the consent decree that prevents Georgia election clerks from scrutinizing signatures. The legal settlement signed in March addresses accusations about a lack of statewide standards for judging signatures on absentee ballot envelopes. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, said that not only is it entirely possible to match signatures, but that the state requires it. When a voter requests an absentee ballot on a paper application, he or she must sign it. Election officials compare the signatures to the signature in voter registration files before a ballot is sent to the voter, Raffensperger said. When these ballots are returned, the required signatures on the outer envelope is compared to signatures in the voter registration system. This process was spelled out in detail in the consent decree, a legal settlement that was signed March 6th. See if there's anything else about signatures. It's more about Georgia. Let's see if he's talking about any other states. Nope, yep, but we don't need to go into that anymore. Yeah, so again, unless this is referring to something else I'm not finding, signatures are being verified. This is all garbage. Miri, thank you for the 100 bits, buddy. Hey, Fancy Sloth, thanks for the host, dude. Apologies to everyone. I usually don't read chat during this portion of the broadcast, but I want to say thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I've been seeing a lot of follows come in. I need to get my alerts set up so that you guys get your credit for doing that. I apologize for not having it, but I do want to say thank you all for tuning in. And let us continue. So, fake signature accepted, debunked, unless someone can provide some other claim. Tony W, by the way. Whistleblowers alleging wrongdoing. Okay. I'm assuming this is talking about what happened in Pennsylvania. We're not even going to go into it. Homeboy, postal worker recanted allegations about tampering, officials say. This is from November 10th. We've already heard the whole bullshit back and forth. Basically, this guy was being investigated, as one would do. When you make a claim, it's not pressuring, while the law enforcement definitely does, and I absolutely hate this, and I think there should be controls over how law enforcement can engage with the suspect to a degree that they're not pressuring them into or out of something that they shouldn't be, whether that's accepting a sentence or saying things without a lawyer or whatever, right? But this guy comes in and is rightfully questioned and is basically told, like, hey, yeah, like if you're lying, it's really serious. But then the the people from that super reliable conservative group, what's it called? The Project Veritas, right? You know, they've never been full of shit. They get a hold of him, and then the guy unrecants his story. Okay, we're not even going to go into this one. And if this is the one that you look at and you say, aha, you couldn't debunk them all. I mean, again, I'm taking him at his word before he was grabbed a hold by Project Veritas, who probably said many, many promises of many things that are to come should you hold your ground on this one. Hundreds of sworn affidavits. Taco? Oh, did I not even do that one? Oh, I must not have, because oh, that's right. Okay, cool. So these affidavits, right? I also, if you're gonna you really need two green checks that you say, haha, you didn't fully debunk. You can also have this one. These affidavits are bullshit. These affidavits coming out are being disproven. We already talked about in the video the other day the affidavit with regard to was it Michigan, or I can't remember. No, maybe it was Arizona with the whole Biden van and the human wall and all that stuff. The Steven Crowder video where he's talking about, you know, giving credibility to this guy's absurd claims. Let's see, human wall. What was it, Nevada? Ooh, taco. Sorry, I'm being attacked by a cat. Okay, I did add the some emotes. I like them very much. Okay, sorry. All right, let's continue. So yeah, with regards to the hundreds of sworn affidavits, like they're being dismissed as fast as they come up. Okay, look at the court transcripts. We'll do that for tomorrow's stream. I'll get some highlights and we'll talk about them tomorrow. So let's continue. Venezuela ownership stake in voting system. Smartmatic does not own Dominion voting systems. We already talked about this before, right? So just remember, Venezuelan ownership stake in voting systems. Now, real quick, so we have integrity on our end. We did know is Smart. I think Smartmatic is a Venezuelan company. Actually, its headquarters in London, and it seems to be a multinational corporation. Yeah. It doesn't seem to be a Venezuelan company. So I'm really curious. This is another one. What exactly is the claim? Smartmatic does not own Dominion Voting Systems. Claim Dominion Voting Systems, one of the most widely used election technology firms in the United States, is owned by the company Smartmatic through an intermediary company called Indra. AP's assessment false. Both Dominion and Smartmatic have released statements saying no ownership relationship exists between the two competing firms. Indra Sistemas, a Spanish company, told the Associated Press in the email it has never developed any project or had a commercial, contractual, or corporate relationship with either firm. The facts: since U.S. voters chose Joe Biden as their new president-elect, President Donald Trump and his supporters have sought to undermine trust in the results despite a lack of evidence. Can someone illuminate me on what exactly this claim is trying to say regarding Venezuela? Is it just because one of the founders was Venezuelan? Like, so let's just take it at what I can gather from this moment. It's not a Venezuelan company. It's a multinational corporation. The only election that Smartmatic was involved in was Los Angeles. The end. It was Los Angeles. That's the only part of the election they were involved in. Los fucking Angeles, which Los Angeles popular vote. I mean, I want to say that there's no fucking way that Trump had any substantial thing in 2016, let alone 2017. But yeah. Oh, my God. Okay. Oh, cool. Another PolitiFact. Let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and add this. Smartmatic and Dominion systems were built to do this very thing for changing the results of the election. This could also be categorized under up here, the Dominion voting machines accusations. Trump lawyer claims voting technology companies were created for changing election results. Since Election Day, voting technology companies have been the subject of disinformation that seeks to undermine confidence in the integrity of the vote. Dominion and Smartmatic make electronic voting systems. Neither was created for changing the results of elections. Smartmatic technology was not used in any of the battleground states won by Biden, where Trump allies are disputing the results. Also, let's remember that there are a bunch of conservative success stories throughout the country where those election results must be true and are being celebrated. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency said the 2020 election was the most secure in American history. A moment of truth-telling. Speaking truth to power, as it were. Getting someone fired in the Trump administration, by the way. That finding has been affirmed by at least one independent audit of the voting machines. Oh, my God. What are these last two? I didn't put anything here. Let's see. Voting system processing parts from China. That's not a fucking claim. That's not a legitimate claim. Do you know how much of our fucking system, do you know how much of our government infrastructure is built on Chinese parts? Like, what logic do you think that is? Again, let's circle back to the beginning of this series, where at the beginning, we were talking about how these were being penetration tested. In fact, I want to show you this tweet. I need to show you this tweet. Oh. So, I think this is a Russian bot. But Jack Prosevic is the originator of this. let's just go ahead and look at that real quick. So
already in use.
now these are Dominion voting systems. Oh, we can do that. Cool. So let's do a little analysis first. Jack says, and there it is, folks. MSNBC in 2019 reporting how easy it is to hack Dominion and ES&S voting machines. So let's see to what degree of integrity Mr. Jack is operating here. Let's watch this clip, shall we? Let's get based and red pilled.
Jacob, tell me who these hackers are and what they're finding.
This is a very paranoid scene here, Ali. We're among some of the greatest hacking minds in the country, people who've been brought together by, above-board companies to try to be as creative as they can and as insidious as they can in attacking systems like you see behind me. These are some of the most common systems used as of 2018 in elections, and so they're here to really test this stuff out.
All righty. Ability that they discovered.
Well, one of the big vulnerabilities we're definitely seeing here is just the incredible, the dated nature of this technology. It is extremely old. A lot of it dates from the 90s. And what's one of the most alarming things to me is that a lot of the equipment you see behind me, well, in fact, all of the equipment you see behind me was not, in fact, provided by the companies. Companies like ES&S and Dominion, which are the top manufacturers of voting equipment, they had to buy this stuff on eBay and through government surpluses. That's one of the organizers told me here. And so the idea that we have to sort of pull this stuff in order to test it out without the cooperation of the companies involved is really quite alarming. But
a moment of integrity. This is going to be strange to you guys, but here it comes. I was incorrect. I thought that this was provided to them for the hacking. So I was wrong. But the idea that Dominion wasn't aware of this, I know no company that has ever been hacked at. I'm assuming they're at either DEF CON or Black Hat since it's Las Vegas. I have never been to any of those conventions and not known that even if the company wasn't involved, that they weren't heavily monitoring something involving them. So the idea that Dominion in summer 2019, when this was going on, was not aware that it got brought up on MSNBC, aware that hackers were hacking their shit and that they weren't doing things to actively take advantage of this system or this information is fucking absurd. But let's also talk to the part that, like, there are audit trails for all of these votes. There's no proof of anything being hacked except in 2016, when certain voting systems, I don't know if it was Dominion, but in 2016, certain voting systems were compromised by Russia. But hey, we're not allowed to talk about that, right?
considering the kind of sophistication I've seen, we have all of our phones off.
Even though those systems were compromised, there's no evidence that anything was changed in them, by the way. Because, again, we have like a competent government that is concerned about election security and is monitoring these things.
The wait staff here in Las Vegas has been told not to have their phones on while this conference is going on. The idea that they're going to then go at this kind of dated equipment is pretty alarming.
Jake, cybersecurity companies that are involved in this, banking, they spend billions of dollars on cybersecurity. Are the kinds of resources necessary to protect voting systems available to election officials in this country?
Well, this is what's so alarming about being here is that you see teams literally of hundreds of hackers in the employ of companies like IBM to be a sort of think tank, a skunk works, for discovering the latest trends in hacking. Well, an election official barely has the money for a single IT consultant, much less anybody coming in to try to imagine what could go wrong if we went at these guys. So for me, the gap here between the billions being spent on cybersecurity across the country by private actors and the fact that they had to buy this equipment on eBay just to test it out, I think that tells you everything you need to know.
So I think the reporting there is actually a little bad, not because it's not saying what I wanted to say, but because they kind of say some stuff about like hacking and pen testing that's absurd. Like, yeah, sure, these county officials don't have it, but the county officials' job is to make sure that they're buying a good system. It's the job of the company to validate the system, right? And so the idea that some of this shit isn't happening behind the scenes is absurd. And also, I don't think anything in that report said that it's being easily hacked, or that everything is vulnerable to hacks. What kind of a dumb fucking comment is this? But the idea is that you make it more and more as impenetrable as possible. You pen test it, you patch it, you correct it, etc. I haven't seen a serious claim for this, so if someone has a link, I am happy to address it. But otherwise, that report didn't say these systems are wickedly flawed, super vulnerable. What all it was saying is that, so he was talking about like the terror of the situation. It's like, I mean, the terror of the situation, if you're talking about the part where county officials aren't running events like this, sure. But otherwise, penetration testing isn't something scary. And they didn't come out and say, look at how easy it was and all the crazy things these people were able to do. Now, having experience with that community, I bet they were able to do some crazy shit. But really, I'm not understanding the conclusions made from that clip. Yeah, he literally only said the machines are old. The end. We're getting low on coffee, which is perfect because we are getting low on reality. It doesn't make sense. But neither does this image. So in short, I say this was a successful debunking. Let us recap, shall we? Dead voters, not the case. Corrupted tabulation software, not the case. Dominion exec part of Biden's team. Not only is the person that's part of Biden's team not part of Dominion, he's part of a completely different company. He's there on a volunteer effort, and he's not even the CEO. He's the chairman, right? I guess we might consider that an executive, but he's not the executive officer, which is what the original claim was. So this is actually not in line with the actual claim going around. 28 states sent votes overseas for counting. There is zero evidence of that, and it's the dumbest fucking conspiracy theory I've ever heard of. Observers illegally removed, both in Pennsylvania and Michigan. We debunked that. The Pennsylvania people were 100% there, as were the Michigan ones. Both cases were completely turned into something they aren't. Oh, find this helpful? Follow Peter Tarr on Parler to support. Mathematical impossibilities. So they were talking about that. What's it called? The BL. I can't remember what the name of that thing is. That's garbage. Wisconsin 342. The ballot dump. That's garbage. That's just votes being counted. And if they got rid of the votes that they wanted, I think that wipes out the city of Milwaukee or some shit. 15,000 plus votes miscounted in Georgia. There were issues with some memory cards and some stuff not being rescanned, but it was all human error. It wasn't fraud. It wasn't an attempt to steal the election. It was an election rigging. More voters than people in a county. Again, this is something that is debunked and was not the case, assuming that they're talking about Detroit, but if they're talking about Wisconsin as well, that was another thing that was shown to be false. Fake signatures accepted? No. None of Trump's claims about fake signatures being accepted was true. There are methods in place to verify signatures, and these officials were required to verify those signatures. Ooh. Whistleblowers alleging wrongdoing. Again, like that whistleblower, assuming we're talking about the guy from Erie, backtracked and then backtracked the backtrack, but it's a little suspect at this point. Hundreds of sworn affidavits that continue to get thrown out day after day. Venezuelan ownership stake in voting systems. This one seems absurd and unverifiable. If they are talking about that one company, the Smartmatic company, Smartmatic was only involved in the Los Angeles election, and yeah, and also there's no evidence that it's a Venezuelan company. It's a multinational corporation, but maybe ownership stake is supposed to just imply that Venezuela is involved in it. Voting system processing parts from China. Again, most of America is made in China. This is a really stupid thing. A lot of government systems are made in China. And voting machines vulnerable to hacks. That news clip wasn't associated with this, but the idea that there's nothing substantiating this. There's nothing like, what's her name? Sidney Powell came out and was talking about how hackable the voter system was. But if we want to go ahead and we want to go back to Mr. Tucker Carlson for a second, even Tucker Carlson in his retraction of sorts. Let's see. Well, let's watch that video one more time. Even Tucker Carlson, in what is being called a retraction, says this.
Prosecutor, and her claim that roughly 7 million votes were secretly changed on election night by rigged vote counting software. Well, in the last 24 hours since we did that, we've heard from a lot of people about that segment, including people in the White House and people close to the president. Like us, they have concluded that this election was not fair. Like us, they are willing to...
Like us, by the way. He's like, no, we're still on your side. By the way, we don't fully walk it back. Like, I'm sorry for asking evidence. Like, it doesn't mean we're not on your side. We still think this was fucked up, even though we don't have evidence, which we are going to continue with.
Any explanation for what happened. Like us, they have not seen a single piece of evidence showing that software changed votes.
Watch how in detail he goes to point out how many people have not seen evidence.
Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It might have happened. It means they haven't seen any evidence that it happened. And by they, we are including other members of Donald Trump's own legal team. They have not seen Powell's evidence either. No testimony from employees inside the software companies, no damning internal documents, no copies of the software itself. So that's where we are. Sidney Powell came on Fox this morning and suggested we may not have to wait much longer. I fully expect, she says, that we will be able to prove all of it in a court within the next 2 weeks. Well, as far as we're concerned, that is great news. If Sidney...
Anyway. So that's it. Come at me, bros. Come at me, all of you Tim Poolites, with your unsubstantiated claims. I will make these items available. I'm going to, when this video is up, I'm going to post it to the Tim Pool subreddit. I will post it with all of these bullet points, and the video will also have timestamps so that that you can go point by point and see what we have to say. And now that segment's done. That'll be the end of a video. Thank you all for watching. Much appreciated. Love you all. My name is Lycan. Please subscribe to my channel, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I need your subs and I need your support so I can grow my shit bigger. Please, oh please, I don't need donations, just need your follows and adorations. Please, 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 like, subscribe, and follow.